Welcome back to We Are Lakeshore. I'm very excited to have our guest today, who is not only giving his testimony today, but the man who is normally behind the camera. Him and his lovely wife, Wanda, just have been putting these videos together and creating what we have now seen as We Are Lakeshore. So, Jeff, we're just very excited, and thank you so much for all the work that you put into this. What a lot of people don't know is the editing. So Jeff works a regular job, and on Saturdays, his day off, he's usually spending that just editing and putting this all together for us. So it's been a huge blessing, and it's turning into such an amazing ministry. So we're just thankful for the blessing.
Good.
Yeah, so on that note, we're excited to hear your testimony. So why don't we start there? Okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I wrote a couple of notes because I tend to ramble when I'm nervous. So it's easier to be behind the camera. I accepted the Lord. I went forward when I was about 12 years old, and I accepted the Lord, said the sinner's prayer or whatever it was. I felt compelled to go at a Billy Graham concert. It was in North Bay. And I remember going to school the next day, super excited about what I had said to the Lord, and I remember telling my friends, and it was not cool to them, you know what I mean? And I remember thinking right away, going, oh, maybe this isn't as good as I thought it was, right? Like right off the bat. And we were going to church and all this kind of stuff too, coming to Lakeshore. And so I felt myself kind of quiet about it, right? I didn't say anything about it after that. Life went on through school, not really living a godly life. Still listening to Christian music all the time, and my parents, they always prayed at the table and stuff like this. So I was very familiar with it. I decided to run away at 17 because they wouldn't let me stay out and do what I wanted to do, right? I couldn't stay at my friends' houses. I couldn't party if I wanted to. Right. And so I ended up having a really bad experience when I moved out. I was on welfare, living on my own, dropped out of school, made some really poor choices, and ended up getting stuck down in Toronto with a guy that was like 50 years old, really scary. Wasn't sure how I was going to be able to make it home. And I remember as soon as I managed to get home from Toronto, I called my parents up right away, and I'm like, will you take me back home?
Yeah,
like this.
Forgive me, whatever you
want. That's
right,
yeah. So I went back, things started to change. I got myself a job, I got my car, I was being responsible. I had a couple of jobs. This is probably about the time that we met. Yeah. And so then I met your sister, and again, because I wasn't living right, because I wasn't really following my convictions, still going to church, still, putting on the show at church and stuff. And I ended up having my son at 19. Which terrified me. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know how to be a man myself, right? I didn't know how to be responsible. And so I managed to make more poor choices during that relationship, and it caused the end of it. And I remember at that point when the relationship ended, because now, I can't be with my son all the time. I'm like, oh no, what's this gonna mean? So I got right on my face, and I started going out to Bible studies again, but I was like, I'd always kind of learned, God helps you, and God finds a way to, if you have enough faith, you can move mountains, and so I was so stuck on this. And someone, who was it, Jim Wilson, gave me a verse at that time, which I'll share later, and I kind of misread it, and I remember him going, be careful, Jeff, that's not necessarily what it said. And I'm like, no, faith, she'll come back, God will restore it, everything will be good. So when that didn't happen, I got bent. And I remember blaming God and thinking like, yeah, thanks a lot for that, I remember just being angry. It was my own choices that got me there.
You're feeling like, I've had so much faith. I've been praying about this. I've been bettering myself.
I was so good for this last month. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. And I was like, if I sin, maybe God won't answer me then, or he won't do it. So it was just just a crazy theology that I couldn't make sense of. Anyway, so at 21, approximately around there, I decided to go truck driving and kind of run away from it all, because I just couldn't be around that situation. And I found it constantly affected me, and it was, sad and this and that and everything else. So I went truck driving, got away from it all. Obviously, there's not much. I don't know how to say it. There's not much encouragement you can get on the road sitting by yourself in a truck all the time. Did that for about 3 years, and slowly my life started to decline again. So then I decided truck driving was enough. I was sick of being away from my kids all the time. At this point, I was pretty well over it. And when I came back, I met my first wife. I obviously wasn't then, but she wasn't saved, and I wasn't living right by any stretch of the imagination. I wasn't going to church, hadn't been in a long time because I was gone all the time, right? Yeah. And I was playing in bars at the time. I was using my gift to probably not play in a church and stuff like this. Just making really bad choices. And we got married, immediately had a daughter, and she had she got into an accident before I had met her, and had a bad back injury. Right. And the doctors prescribed her Percocet. And living that life of partying and hanging out, I'd always heard that this was a fun time, right? I'm like, oh, whatever, might as well try it. Knew nothing about it, okay? Yeah. And so when I took the first pill, I still remember the first time I ever took it. I'm sitting playing a video game, and I just thought to myself, oh my goodness, this is the greatest game I've ever played in my life. Like, it was just something it does to you, makes you more excited than you should be about things,
like the
right?
pill kind of heightened everything.
Yeah. And it was filling a hole that I was trying to fill. Instead of with the Lord, I was filling it with other things, right? It was I didn't feel happy. I felt empty. I've had this big pit in my stomach all the time. Even when I got into another relationship, I still felt like that, right? I was trying to fill it with anything, with a person, So anyway, that ended up getting to the place where I was taking her and stealing her pills all the time. We were constantly fighting about it. And it came to the place where she finally left me. And again, here I am on my face again, right? And I'm like, oh no, this is horrible. So I went back out to church again. I started getting involved. I started playing at the church. I was playing at the harbor at the time, playing drums all the time and stuff like this. But unfortunately, the pill addiction hadn't gone away. I was just hiding it from everyone.
Right.
So, and it's one of those things I guess you can take and people wouldn't really notice.
You can function in
That's right, yeah. I was still going to work. I was being responsible. I didn't come out going like, hey guys, like it doesn't act that way. It just made me feel different. It was, and so the church started to notice when I was hawking all my stuff. What ended up happening was I had a job at Miller. I was doing recycling all over the city, made lots of money. That was after we had split up. Did that for about 3 years, and I made a lot of money. Unfortunately, and that's how Satan works, right? There was a guy at the place that had a back injury also, and he was taking Oxy, which is just a stronger version of Percocet. And I remember I started buying them off him, and it got more and it got more, and it got to the place where I was spending about $950 to $1,000 every 2 weeks on it. Right. Like, I could barely live at this point. I ended up losing my job because I got into one backing accident, which then I had no money, and I still had this horrible pill addiction. So I started hawking my drums. I started stealing. I started just doing anything I could to get this, right?
Whatever, yeah.
And the church started to notice when about $3,000 of my drum set was in the hawk shop and I couldn't get it back out. And the parts just started disappearing off the stage when I would play, right? And they started asking questions. My parents started asking questions. And they proposed to me that I go to Teen Challenge. Yeah. So that was a really scary thing. It's a year of your life, right? And as far as I had fallen, I still thought, this is a year of my life. Like, what am I going to do? So I prayed about it a lot at the time, still battling with the addiction. At this point, I was living with my parents because I kind of burnt all my other bridges and stuff, and they were kind of trying to coax me into going here. And I remember writing in a journal. I was journaling at the time, and it said, what was it? I was praying, God, should I go? Is this the right choice? And the very next day, if I don't open up the Bible, and I was reading the Recovery NLT on top of it, right? It happened to be the Bible that I was just had at the time. And it started talking about the next verse that came up in the Bible study that I was in was, I should have gotten the verse. Deuteronomy, I think it's chapter 30, verse 15.
You can edit though, so you can actually put that in.
I should, yeah. Yeah. It's, today I give you a choice between blessings and cursings, between, and I,
Life and death.
yeah, that's right. And it's like, if you choose life, this will happen. But if you choose not to, and I'm like, okay, Lord, I get it. I'm going. Yeah. So made the preparations, went to Teen Challenge, year of my life. Unbelievable, completely sheltered, got on fire for God again, like really lost that hole, right? I was like, this is where and I remember leaving going, wherever you want me to go, God. I mean, I'm cool, whatever you want me to do. Felt like I was supposed to come home, and immediately, as soon as I got home, I got stuck in this loneliness again and started to drift away from the amount of time that I was spending in my Word. And I remember I got hooked up with a girl that I wasn't really saved, that I was trying to talk to the Lord about. I wanted to be, I still wanted that, but it gradually started dragging me down, and I had about 2 or 3 relationships after that. Same thing, just kept diminishing my walk with Him, and I got to the place again where I was like, how did I get here? Like, here I am again. I've claimed to be a Christian for 30 years. What's going on? So to fast forward a little bit, a little ways into that, this would have been about 3 years ago, my mom got in a car accident. And I remember being at work, and Dad gave me a call. And Dad's normally the type of person that's like, oh, everything, if he calls, chances are it's a little bit more serious. But I thought, a car accident, okay, she got bumped or something like this. So I show up at the hospital, and she can't feel anything from her elbows down. And she's had a severe spinal injury, and she's a paraplegic. So it wasn't so much that affected me. It was watching, it was watching my dad. It was watching my dad and how it affected his faith. And anyway, so I didn't have the answers, right? So I started to drift bad, and I was like he was serving the Lord at the time, and I was like, oh, just give me a sec. I was like, if he's struggling with these questions, and I don't have them, like, who am I? Like, what's going on? Like, God, why would you allow that to happen? Like, I seen my mom get fired up for the Lord, and I seen my dad kind of fall away, and I was like, I know you allow stuff in our lives, Lord, but why this? So anyway, then I met my wife. She was a Christian. She was a new believer at the time, right fired up, talked about the Lord all the time. I actually met her at, it would have been Hop with Anna and Herb and stuff, and she had come out and I had seen her there, and she had seen me previously a couple of times. Yeah, you know how it is. And it was funny, the first time we met, we're sitting in a big prayer circle, and after it was done, the person who was telling us to pray says, okay, well, now hug the person beside you. And she happened to be beside me.
Just like, yes,
and I was just like, right on. So that was really cool how God kind of orchestrated that.
Yeah, there's nothing better than having God as your wingman. So.
Well, that's it, right? Yeah, this was like, I wasn't looking at the time, right? And it was awesome how that happened, and then our relationship went. But again, okay, same problem. I was trying to, I maybe wasn't 100% with the Lord. I was still trying, I was still doing what I could. I was reading my Bible in the morning, stuff like this, but still maybe watching stuff I shouldn't have been watching, playing games I probably shouldn't have been playing, not really living the life outside of church. And so when I got into that relationship thinking, oh, she's a Christian, this would be great, we'll both serve the Lord. Well, if anything, I started dragging her down. And so about a year later, we got married, and I thought, oh, okay, we're going to get married and everything will be great. And I continued to drag us down because of stuff that I was struggling with, like pornography and drugs and stuff that I still hadn't, I wasn't doing those pills, but still I was struggling with other stuff.
Still filling that void.
Yes, there was still a hole. And I remember wanting to get really upset about the pornography, and rightly so. And I had a really hard time hearing it. I'm like, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what happened to me when I was a kid. All this kind of stuff. And I felt so defensive about it. Like, I've been struggling with this, trying my whole life and stuff like this. And I thought to myself, I'm going to do it again. Right? I'm going to screw up another relationship because I'm too stubborn to put things in place to guard myself against these temptations that clearly Satan keeps pulling on me with, right?
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing was, after we had fought a few times about it, I went, okay, she's the one who suggested it. I think I'd mentioned it accidentally in a conversation, and so she was like, yeah, let's do that. So we put things in place. I put something on my phone that emails her whenever I look at something inappropriate. I put it on, I myself put it on my computer, because I was like, if I'm sitting on my computer, maybe that's not a good thing either. And I put it on the iPad, even the iPad, I couldn't put it on there, so I locked it out and I gave her the password. And so it's like, make no allowance for sin. So once that started to happen, I would get in my word and I wouldn't feel guilty for the next 5 days afterwards. I was actually starting to grow, and I was starting to get closer to him again.
Well, you're starting to actually put Jesus into that void.
Yeah.
You know, going through his word and spending time with him.
Yeah, and that's what was happening, is that sin that I was allowing in my life. And I'm not saying we can do this on our own, but I'm saying that sin I kept allowing in my life was the very thing that Satan kept pulling on every time I'd have the temptation or something, and then I felt like I was right back at square one going, God, help me. And it separates us from him.
Yeah.
So it started to separate me from him, and then I didn't want to go to him, right? It's like Adam and Eve in the garden. As soon as they sinned, they wanted to hide from him. They felt terrible, you know?
Yeah.
And we're all going to make mistakes, but when it's that thing that you just don't want to let go of, that's not a good thing, you know?
So just for anybody out there today that's hearing this message and you're thinking, you know what, like I'm battling with stuff like this. You know, I come to church, I'm doing my best, I'm, you know, doing more Bible studies. Like Jeff's story, what he's saying, like that's, how many years do you think you did that in your Christian walk?
12 years, I'm 42 now.
Yeah, so 12 years of just doing that pattern.
30 years.
30 years, okay.
30 years, man.
Yeah, 30 years. So, yeah, 40, wow. Oh, we're getting old. But on a serious note with that though, you know, this is a pattern that we can continue to walk in, and Jesus doesn't want that for us. He came to set the captives free. You know, in your life right now today, you know, and as Jeff's been telling us, what he did to make the difference, you know, was saying enough is enough. You know, I'm going to put these safeguards in place, which is the great start of it, but then adding Jesus into those areas, spending that time with God, building relationship with him. How do you feel now in your Christian walk, now that you've done these things? Like, is there anything that you would say, oh, I really wish I still had this, or I really wish I could go back to that? Like, when God sets us free, we're free indeed.
It makes you miserable. You think the sin satisfies you, but it's Satan's lie. That's the lie, right?
Yeah.
And until we come in line with what we believe is true, right? So that's what changes it. We gotta lay down our will, right? We gotta lay down our life. We gotta lay down our wants, our desires. It's not about Jesus is my genie in a bottle and he'll fix my life. And that's I don't want to say that's what I learned in the church, but that's what my church culture was saying at the time. It was like, that's what I saw anyway, right? I saw people going to their jobs and praying for promotions and praying for prosperity and praying for, you know, and I'm like, oh, I should be able to do that too. So when things would go wrong in my life and he didn't fix them because of my own choices, right? When he didn't just, like, sure, he brought beauty from ashes afterwards.
Yeah.
But that was when I was, you know, walking in his, like...
Yeah. Well, I think it is true. Like, seek ye first the kingdom of God So it is putting him first over our desires, our wants, just like you're saying.
He knows your heart.
Yeah, and everything else will be added unto you. So your heart's desires, when you look at now that you have put God first, regardless of what you wanted, regardless of how you felt, and even like there's so much stuff that happens in life that there isn't an answer for it, and yet we still have to walk through it and still trust that He is who He says He is.
There's a reason for it, right? If we're serving Him, I remember my the guy who was watching over. We used to call him the sheriff, Brian Hall.
This is at Teen Challenge.
Yeah,
okay.
At Teen Challenge. Yeah, if he watches this, he'll get a kick out of that. Anyway, I remember him saying that to me when I felt called to go to Teen Challenge. And I got that verse, and I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt, God told me to be there, right? I was walking in line with His will at that point, right? I knew what He wanted me to do. And He says, and we used to get in trouble. We'd get like D, they called it, and you'd lose coffee privileges in your movie and blah, 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 just dumb stuff. But when you got nothing, it was pretty important.
And coffee, it's a big deal.
That's where I learned about the headaches. So anyway, he said to me one time when he was giving me D, and I'm like, I didn't even do anything. It was someone else in the dorm that did it, right? And he's like, look, if God called you to be here, and you know in your heart that you're supposed to be here, then the question is no longer, why am I here, right? Which questions what I should be doing. It's, what is He trying to teach me through? And it changed everything for me. I was like, okay, wait a minute. So that means that He saw this and went, yep, still approved. And He saw my mom getting in the car accident and went, yep, still approved. Because He's in control of it all, right? And I don't understand that. I'm not God. I'm not trying to say bad things don't happen. Of course they do. But He can use it. I don't know what He does. I'm not God.
Yeah.
But it's what is He trying to teach me in this, right? What is He trying to... And if we stay and don't learn, we get bent. James MacDonald used to say, either you get bent or you get better.
Yeah.
Right? So either I learn from what I'm going through and my life situation and I get better because of it and I grow stronger, or I get bitter and I go back into my sin. And He doesn't let us go.
No.
You just keep hammering us until we finally wake up or we meet Him.
He is a God who pursues us for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, you talked earlier about your favorite Bible verse. I'm wondering if that was it.
Yeah.
So what verse is that?
My verse is Jeremiah 29:11, which I know is a very common verse, but when I read it, I misread it. I read it in a Good News Bible. That when it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future." The version that I read said, to give you the future you hope for, which is a complete and total different thing. Yeah. And this is where Jim was saying, okay, maybe you shouldn't quite take that as literal as... And I remember reading it in other versions going, well, it doesn't sound the same. This is what I hope for. I want my girlfriend to come back. I want all this stuff to be... And if I just, So I'm like, no, I'm hanging on to it. Anyway, that's what it says, right? His will or my will.
Yeah.
But the more important part is this, and this was always part of the verse for me. 12 goes on to say, then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back from captivity. Which implies that He allowed us to go through that, right?
There's trials, there's things that we have to go through.
I will gather you from all the nations and the places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile. So it's about God is in control. He allows things in our life for us to give Him our will, our life. It's laying it down, making those hard choices, serving Him. What does He call us to do? Go out and speak to people. Then we need to do that. Otherwise we suffer and we pull back and we fall back into our sin again. That was always the disconnect, is that I didn't apply what I read in the gospel to my life. And then you gradually just get lukewarm.
Yeah, just start to fall back into old habits and different...
And He doesn't say good stuff about being lukewarm.
No.
Like that. I don't want to meet him when I'm like that. I don't want to meet him when I'm doing life on my own. I don't know. I don't know what he would say on that day, but I certainly don't feel like it would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good challenge for all of us, and we'll probably close off on that soon. We also want to get Jeff's favorite song to encourage us on the way out. But I think, we do see that quite often where we'll go to an event like Promise Keepers, or we'll go to, a Bible study, and we get so fired up for Jesus. Usually within a week or so, it's a little less. We're still maybe reading our Bible a little bit more actively. But then a week after that, it starts to get a little less again. And then life just kind of slowly goes back to the way it was. And I know even in my own life, and at one point, believe it or not, I was afraid to do evangelism. I didn't want to do it, and God just kept bringing me into positions where I'd feel the Holy Spirit tugging on my heart, and I thought, oh, okay, I have to say it, and lots of times I wouldn't, and then I'd feel guilty after, and I'm like, Lord, what if you really wanted to use me in that time? And he did. He's called us to be his hands and feet, but as I was continually being obedient, it just started to happen more and more, and it was more natural. God doesn't want to put us in positions where, we're so fearful and broken, and we're going to end up in something where it's like the worst possible scenario. When we're trusting him, he is a good father who's taking us by the hand. He's leading us through that. And when we start living it out, and I think this is the main point that I'm just getting from this last part that Jeff was talking about, is we are called to have a love relationship with Jesus, spend time with Jesus, read his word and get to know him and grow. But part of growing then is to go out. We cannot become an island to ourselves, isolated, even in a church. Like if we become that, we're really just a country club. We need to be a church, and I'm not saying that directly just to our church, but I think all churches, we need to really look at this in a new way and think, are we being the hands and feet? Like, yes, we send out missionaries. Yes, we're doing these things. Like at our church, we do the Monday program.
That's right.
We're trying to meet the lost. We did that outreach. And I'll tell you, on that outreach, when we did that, I just saw people come to life.
Hey, Justin.
That was something very amazing.
I have to say, honest to goodness, my wife has always come here. I used to come here years and years ago, back when Pastor Mark was first the pastor here. And I've always loved the church. Like I love Lakeshore. There's no question there. But I was playing at the Harbor, and I was pretty well the only drummer there and stuff like this. But Wanda always wanted me to come here, so I was doing back and forth. It was the outreach that made me go, that's what we need to be doing. I'm 1,000% on board for that. And it's terrifying, man. You're just like I don't get me wrong, it's uncomfortable, but I'm like, I just left that going like, yes, this is what he wants.
It brings you to life.
That's right. That's what we were created for. That's our purpose.
Well, you think of our statement and our mission statement now as a church is to know, to grow, and to go. And I think if we apply all three,
I agree.
It creates a very different Christian walk in life.
Oh yeah. Wait till we get the cameras on the street, man. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I want this to turn into.
Amen.
That's cool.
That's good. So your favorite song?
Favorite song is, I just listened to it the other day, Though You Slay Me by Shane and Shane.
Okay, and that's the John Piper version?
That's right. Okay. Very serious song, but I have a hard time listening to that one.
Okay, well, we will have that on for sure. And Jeff, I just want to thank you because, to me, this testimony, this is straight from your heart, and just the things that you've talked about today. I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate when we've gone through really difficult things where there isn't an answer, and we just have to trust that God is who he says he is. Walking through, that relationship where we're up and down with Jesus all the time. To me, what this says is there is a way to come into a place with the Lord where he wants to push you through the temptation, push you through the sin, and set us free. And then looking back, it's like, why did I ever want to stay there?
Yeah, we that's the thing, is that there's a part we have to play in it. God's not going to force it on us. We have to come in line with the things that we're reading, that we say we believe. If we don't do that, God's not going to grab us by the neck and make us do it. We've got to come in line with him. We've got to put those safeguards in place. We've got to run from that sin. Cut the hand off if it causes you to sin. That's scary stuff, man.
And it's extreme. It's showing us that, if it's causing you to sin, get rid of it.
Yeah, better that than be thrown in the lake of fire. And then you're empty and you're
That could be another 20 minutes.
Anyway, you're right.
We'll end there today, guys. But just on that note again, this is a testimony that I'm hoping that the Lord's going to use to encourage you, to lay down any area of your life, to put safeguards in place. Maybe there is an area of your life that you've isolated. You're not telling anybody, like what's going on for real, and you're coming to church, and we were coming to church, but you're in those circles of influence, and you're just not really coming forward to tell somebody. I want to encourage you to do that today. Who is somebody that you can trust, that you can go to and just say, listen, you know what? Nobody knows this about me, and I can't have this in my life anymore. I need you to pray with me. I need you to, to bring this to God together, because I'm maybe not strong enough right now to do that. And we all are in that boat, guys. Here's the other side of it. Life is a journey. We're all walking this out together. We're better together. We need to be there for each other. And let's not allow the enemy to convince us that we can't tell somebody about what we're battling with. Like I've been friends with Jeff for like 25 years, and I'm so excited to see how things have gone in his life, and really just at the point where Jeff has said yes to Jesus. I've known all the past. We've done it together, and I can just say, even in my own life, like once we said yes and we surrendered, we submitted, then Jesus came in a different way, it's been phenomenal. That's right. And we've been very blessed. We've been blessed with amazing wives and families, and God's just so good. So that's a shout out to you on that as well. Anyways, till next time, Lakeshore. Since Jeff and I are such old friends, we could just ramble on and on. And we better end it now. But we will see you next time. Be blessed. And again, I encourage you to reach out. And even if it's just to somebody in the church, you can call me. I am available throughout the week. Pastor Herb as well, any of our ministry council. It's just so important, guys, that we are fighting this stuff off and living for Jesus. And let's be encouraged going forward after COVID stuff. Even now, we are the light of the world. We want to be the hands and feet. And I'm very excited for some of the street ministry that we've been talking about. And
so cool.
God is moving people. We're excited, and we're just so thankful that you are with us, and we're all moving out together. Have an amazing day. Till next time.